Hi guys, Arisudia here, and I am back with the potentially last episode of AniMay for this year. I told you guys that AniMay was going to run for the month of May, even though I know this episode is coming out on June 1st, and I apologize for that. But at the end of this episode and right now, I'm going to ask you to let me know down in the comments below if you guys want anime content all year round, or if you want anime to just run during the month of May. And if you do want it to run all year round, give me some ideas of what you want the series to be called, because I can't keep the pun of anime if it's not May. So feel free to let me know down in the comments below so that I can cater my content towards you guys. But I am super excited for this last, potentially, episode of AniMay, because it is something that I really want to talk about and I think will be very interesting for you guys. And that is, I'm gonna be discussing my favorite mangaka, but part of why I think you guys might be kind of interested in who my favorite mangaka is actually because my origin story of being Arisudia is actually heavily tied into who my favorite mangaka is. And so we'll get into it, but I want to see if you guys can maybe pick it out before I actually explain my, I guess, origin story, as I like to call it, or just the creation of Arisudia. So let's get into it because I am super pumped. So I actually don't tend to read a lot of manga, and I guess it's not really sacrilege in like the anime community, because I know a lot of people just don't read the manga. Like, some people just don't like reading, some people find it's too expensive, or they don't want to read it illegally. For me, it's more just like time consuming, and like I have to have like more brain power, I guess, to like read than I do to like watch a show. So I actually read very little manga, but there are certain series that if I like the show good enough, like I will go and read the manga. And they're mainly shows that end up either leaving me like really wanting more, or ones that have a lot of questions that I'm like, well, I want to know the answer to this. And so I don't really read manga a lot, but there are a few things that really do get me into manga. And so for me to have not only like a favorite manga, but like I've read like everything that this mangaka has done. I'm a bit behind on their current series, just because like translations and stuff, and I hate waiting like a month at a time. But I've read everything from this mangaka because they quite literally are my favorite. I love how they do their stories. I love how their art looks. And so I'm very happy to introduce that. My favorite mangaka is Mochizuki Jun. And so for those who don't know, Mochizuki Jun is the creator of Pandora Hearts that I mentioned in my top 10 hidden gem animes. I mentioned Pandora Hearts, and I mentioned that I wasn't going to get into it too much because I was going to cover it later on in the series, and here's where I'm going to be covering it more. But before I talk about Pandora Hearts, I'm going to go in chronological order of how they released their work. So first I'm going to be talking about Crimson Shell. Crimson Shell is a one-shot manga. It's about 6 chapters long that Mochizuki Jun released prior to Pandora Hearts. But I actually read it after Pandora Hearts because I didn't actually know that it existed until my sister got me the Pandora Hearts Odds and End art book. And that is because in this art book, Mochizuki Jun actually puts the artwork for Crimson Shell in this as well. So it was a bit of an art book for both of them, but it was more geared towards Pandora Hearts. A little synopsis for you guys is that it is about Claudia, also known as Dia, the Rose Witch and Zeno, a swordsman, who are both a part of Crimson Shell, which is a special division within the organization Red Rose. Red Rose's, more specifically Crimson Shell's, aim is to capture the experiments known as the Black Roses, which are experiments from a scientist, and in the process, they kind of find that their loyalty and bonds, especially between Dia and Zeno, are really being called into question. And I thought that this plot was so cool, but I do feel that it was way too intricate for being a one-shot. Like, I really wish, and I know that Mochizuki Jun is probably not going to do this, but like, I hardcore wish that it was more than a one-shot, because it was only 6 chapters, which is not a lot. And so you were kind of thrown into a storyline in what seemed more like the middle of the storyline. And like, it was kind of like at like the turning point, like the climax of the story. So you're just thrown into the climax. There's a little bit of a flashback to kind of show how characters met and how they have like bonds to each other. But I feel like it was just really confusing when I read it. Granted, I read it a couple years ago, so I was much younger. So maybe if I went back and read it now, I might understand more than I did back then. But I feel like it was too intricate of a plot for a one-shot. I still loved it, and I'm very fascinated with it, but I feel like it was too intricate for being so short, and I wish it was longer so that the intricacy can be like spread out more. And also because I'm really fascinated with like the world that like Crimson Shell takes place in, and so I want more of like understanding of like how things came to be and like more characterization, because there were some really interesting characters that I feel like you really didn't get to explore because the story was so short and the plot was so much. So I really did enjoy Crimson Shell, and if you guys want just a simple one-shot manga, like, I highly recommend like going and checking it out, because like maybe you guys will understand it more than I did. Like I said, I read it when I was probably around like 15, 16 years old. So like, maybe I just didn't understand things that if I went back now, I would get a bit more. But I do remember that I was very kind of confused as to what was happening, but also very interested in what was happening. So that is Crimson Shell. And then moving on to Pandora Hearts, which really is kind of like what made me get into Mochizuki Jun. And so Pandora Hearts is 24 volumes with 3 light novels known as Pandora Hearts Caucus Race. There is a 25 episode anime with a couple of, I believe, they're not, I guess, OVAs. They're like, they call it like outtakes or like extras, I guess. And I believe that there are like 8 of those. And it's so good, and I like hardcore want a remake of the show, and I will explain why. So Pandora Hearts, for those who don't know, and I know I touched a little bit on it in my Hidden Gems video, but I want to talk about it more here. During his coming of age ceremony, Oz Vasilius is dropped into the abyss by a group known as the Baskervilles for his quote-unquote sin that he doesn't know what it is. And in the abyss, he ends up meeting a chain known as Alice, who is searching for her memories. The two end up forming a pact with each other, and with the help of a few members of Pandora, which is an organization that deals with chains, the two set out to find Alice's memory, figure out what Oz's sin is, and find out what really happened in the tragedy of Sablier, which is the country that Pandora Hearts takes place in. And I love this story. And I think part of why I really enjoy this story was actually that Pandora Hearts is severely, like, heavily based off of Alice in Wonderland. Like, apart from just, like, Alice being, like, one of the main characters, there's a pocket watch that is very, like, important to the story, as well as, like, a lot of the characters are based off of characters within Alice in Wonderland, more specifically the chains. The chains are monsters that come from the abyss. And so, like, there's Black Rabbit, Mad Hatter, Mock Turtle, Jabberwock, Cheshire Cat. Even, like, the smaller chains, they have ones that are based off of, like, the card deck. There are, like, the hedgehogs that, like, in the actual, like, Alice in Wonderland story, like, they play croquet with. So it's very heavily based off of Alice in Wonderland, and Alice in Wonderland is one of my favorite stories. So I was, like, immediately taken with Pandora Hearts just for that. But the plot line itself is so intricate, and part of why I want a remake for the anime is that the anime, when it was first released, the manga was nowhere near finishing. And so they ended up having to give the story just, like, a really rushed ending. And you can tell where it kind of, like, drops off from the manga, because in the anime, like, they started off exactly how the manga starts it off, and a lot of questions get asked. Well, when it came time to end the anime, the manga hadn't answered those questions because the manga was still continuing. And so the anime kind of rushed and kind of put together an ending that technically summed up the plot of the anime, but it didn't answer a lot of the questions that were asked. And that's actually why I started reading the manga. Was I started watching the anime and was like, oh my god, this anime is so good. And then I got to the end and was just like, okay, that was a decent ending, but what about all these questions? Like, they were so important at the beginning, but they never got answered. Like, what's the answer? Like, why didn't they answer them? And so I read the manga, and that's where I realized, like, oh, the manga is still ongoing. The manga hasn't answered the questions, so, like, how could the anime? And so now the manga has been finished for probably 3 or 4 years at this point, I believe. And so I really hope, and I don't think they will because I don't think it's popular enough, but I really hope that eventually Pandora Hearts might get a remake, just because the plot is so intricate and so good that I think it would be an amazing series if it was like a 2-3 season show and it just had time to actually get into the intricacies of what the plot is. And that's part of why I really like Mochizuki Jun, is their plots are so intricate and there's all these little details. And Pandora Hearts especially, I think, did a great job, because not only does it have, like, the intricacies and details of its own storyline, but it also weaves in, like, the characters and, like, references to Alice in Wonderland. And so I think it's a really interesting, like, combination of just, like, an original story mixed with this very well-known story. But it is so good, and I really do hope that it will get, like, a remake or just something that kind of completes it. But I feel like because the manga's ended, there are no more light novels coming out, and, like, the story is kind of wrapped up, I don't see it happening, but I still wish that it would, because it is one of the series that has been, like, near and dear to my heart for, like, ages. Like, when I say I love this series, I think it's honestly probably one of the series that I own the most for, especially from, like, a manga aspect. Like, I own the art book. I own the 24th volume of it in English. I own the entire 24 manga set in Japanese. I can't even read it, but I own it because if I were to buy the entire set in English, it would cost me almost $300. But when I was in Japan, I found the entire set prettily packaged for like $30 at a used manga store, and I bought it. And then my friends, I have a picture of one of them carrying it, but he and another one of my friends went back and forth, and for the entire rest of the day that we were shopping, they carried the entire 24 set of manga for me because they were worried that it was too heavy for me to carry, and they refused to let me carry it. But yeah, so I shipped literally that entire 24 set back home, so I have it here. So I own all of those. I own all 3 of the light novels. I own this cute little, like, it's either a keychain or like a little acrylic stand, if I can get it to sit right, of Alice and Oz. Like, I love this show so much. I hope to one day actually, like, get a pocket watch like the one that they have. And I also really want to cosplay as Alice. That's been one of my dream cosplays for, like, the longest time. Like, I am hardcore. Like, I love this show. I actually debated on if I wanted to get a tattoo of the contract sign, but I don't think I am, just because it's supposed to go over your heart, and I'm like, that would hurt. But I'm, like, hardcore, like, in love with the series. Like, it was honestly one of the first anime I got super, super into. Like, a lot of the anime I watched at the start, I got into, but there were very few that I became very fixated on. And Pandora Hearts was one of those ones that I just became very fixated on. And, like, to this day, it is honestly probably it's definitely in my top 3 anime. I would honestly say it's probably my second favorite anime, like, ever. And it's definitely probably my favorite manga series. That one I'm a bit, well, I guess. I have another manga series that I really, really do love, that also holds a lot of significant meaning to me. So I'd say that one and Pandora Hearts are, like, tied. But this show is just, and, like, the story in the manga especially is just so good. Like, reading the manga, like, there are so many, like, twists and turns that it's like you really don't know what to expect. And it's just really intricate and really interesting. So if you like manga, or you're looking for a new series to read, or you like Alice in Wonderland, or you just want, like, a really good, like, kind of, like, supernatural, like, thriller, I would highly recommend Pandora Hearts. Like, it's so amazing. Like, the world building in it is phenomenal. The characterization is amazing. Like, the character growth that you see is really interesting, and there are just so many twists and turns that it will definitely keep you on your toes. It'll make you laugh because it has great comedy. It'll make you cry because characters die. It's really good. I highly, highly recommend it. Like, I recommended a lot of things to, like, watch or read on, like, throughout this anime series, but this one, like, is probably one of the ones that I'm definitely like, you need to read this. You can watch it too. Like, the anime is really good. The animation was really good for the time that it was released. The humor and voice acting in it is just so on point. But it will leave you with a bunch of questions. And then if you want those questions answered, go read the manga. So you can either save yourself time and read the manga first and then watch the anime, or watch the anime and get so curious you end up reading the manga like I did. So that's Pandora Hearts. And now on to the origin story of Arisudia. So obviously, some of you guys might have figured it out. some of you guys might not have. Some of you guys, if you've known me or if you watched like my charity live stream, the Hope from Home one, which was my first charity live stream, like way back, like honestly, I think like a year ago. You guys might have heard it then, or if you guys are like close friends with me, you might have heard me explain it. But for those who haven't figured it out or haven't heard it, this is the origin story of Arisudia. Arisudia is not my real name. Even if you just follow me on social media, you will realize that it is not my real name. The first 4 letters of it do match 4 letters of my real name, and if you follow me on social media, you will realize that I do go by Riss or Rissa, and Riss is in Arisudia. That was completely unintentional. The reason my name is Arisudia is when I was, I think, rebranding my social media right before my senior year of high school, I want to say. I used to go online by a different name that I'm not going to say because it's ridiculously stupid. And I really wanted to rebrand because I was like, this isn't who I am anymore. And so I wanted something really, really cool that was like very unique and could be me. And so I thought long and hard. I tried a bunch of different things. Like I was trying things with the word I, which means love. And as you guys who are watching this know that like my full YouTube name is Arisudia I. And so it did make it into that. But I was playing around with I was playing around with Lolly because I was really into lollipops, and everybody thought that I was like a Lolita because I love Lolita fashion and stuff, and I also just look like I'm 12. And so I was like playing around with things like that, and nothing was really working, nothing was really fitting. And so I was like, okay, like what if I tried to like base it off of like more specific interests than just like anime and stuff in general. And I was also thinking of like if I did artwork for profile pictures and stuff, like what would it look like? And so I thought about Pandora Hearts because I love the story. I love Mochizuki Jun's art. Like they have just a really unique art style, and it's kind of like almost like watercolor, like the way that they paint the pictures and stuff. And so what I did was I was like, okay, at that point in time, only Pandora Hearts and Crimson Shell were out. The series that I will be talking about after my origin story hadn't been released yet. So out of just those 2, I was like, okay, well, Pandora Hearts is my favorite, like, manga, but I also really enjoyed Crimson Shell. I was like, Alice is my favorite character from Pandora Hearts. So I was like, so I want to incorporate that somehow because I've always loved the name Alice, but I've always specifically loved Alice within Pandora Hearts. She's my favorite character from it. And so I was just like, okay, so I want to use Alice somehow. And then I was just like, but just saying Alice isn't really unique. And one of the things that I've always loved about the actual anime is the way that Oz calls Alice's name. And the way that Alice is pronounced in Japanese is Arisu. And so I always loved how he was like always like Arisu, Arisu. And so I was like, oh, what if I did instead of just Alice, the Romanet, or like the like Japanese pronunciation of Alice, but like Romanized. So it's Arisu. And then I was just like, okay, that's kind of cool. I'm like, but that seems a bit too short and like not as unique. So then I was just like, oh, well, Claudia's the name of the Crimson Shell protagonist, but she doesn't go by Claudia, they just call her Dia. I'm like, that's short and cute. What if I combined the 2? And so I combined Arisu with Dia to get Arisudia. So that is actually how I got my name. It is not obviously my real name, but that is kind of like the origin story of my name. And so after I like made that name, I was like, oh my god, that sounds so cool. And so I decided to go with Arisudia. For YouTube, I did add the AI because the way that I made my YouTube, it made me have a first and last name. And I didn't like how splitting up Arisu and Dia looked. So I was like, okay, I'll do Arisudia I. And I thought that was really, really cute. But on all my other social media, it's just Arisudia. And so I did that, and then I think when I made my Tumblr, I wanted to have like a profile picture and a header. And I tried to imitate Mochizuki Jun's art style, and it ended up being these, if I can find what they looked like, which were really bad. I tried actually watercoloring them. I cannot watercolor. That is one of the few art forms I cannot do. And so that's kind of how that came to be. And so, yeah, that's the origin story of my name, in case anybody was wondering, because I know lots of people get really curious about how Arisudia was formed, and a lot of people struggle with like the name because it's a kind of hard name to pronounce. But yeah, so my literally entire like online like identity of my name was inspired by Mochizuki Jun. And so I of course had to talk about them in this video. But before we end the video, I have one more thing to talk about, and that's because this is actually really current and actually kind of maybe important. And that is Mochizuki Jun's current ongoing series. And it is called Vanitas no Carte, or The Case Study of Vanitas. And it is still an ongoing manga, but this coming summer, so literally in like a month, which is like crazy to think about, but super exciting, the anime is going to be released. So the anime has been announced for the summer 2021 lineup, and I'm super excited. I actually did not know about it until I was looking up the release date of a different anime, and I saw this on the list, and I got super, super excited. So I'm actually a lot of chapters behind on this manga because it comes out monthly, and I am very, very bad at keeping up with things at all. Like, I binge things. Those who know me know that, like, I can't even watch, like, a seasonal anime that comes out once a week because I just can't focus like that. I need to just binge watch things. So I, like, read the story in sections. So I think I've read, like, 25 chapters, maybe. So I'm very curious. I am going to catch up and finish it, or finish, like, the up-to-date by the time the anime comes out. But I wanted to touch on it so that maybe you guys will either check out the manga or at least watch the upcoming anime. I can't say how good the anime is going to be since obviously I've not seen it either, but I really do like the storyline of Vanitas no Carte, and the storyline essentially is that the character Noe, I think that's how it's pronounced. It's French, so I don't know. I apologize. I'm really bad with French. So Noe heads to Paris in search of the Book of Vanitas, a book of legend written by a vampire named Vanitas who was hated by his own kind. In the midst of a vampire attack, he ends up meeting a mysterious doctor of vampires named Vanitas, who is a human who inherited both the book and the name. Noe ends up getting wrapped up in the whims and trouble that Vanitas gets into as he tries to heal his patients and more. There are lots of like vampire human politics mixed in, lots of interesting fighting, lots of lore surrounding vampires. especially like aristocratic ones. And it is really good. It hasn't grabbed me the way that like Pandora Hearts grabbed me, but it's still like very interesting, and like the world building is like so unique, and I'm like really curious as like who's betraying who, like what each organization does, and like is the organization like true to what they're saying that they're doing. And so there's just like a lot of like really cool, interesting things. And it's a really interesting take on like vampires, which are very overly used, like supernatural being. But I think that the way that Vanitas no Carte does, like vampires, is really interesting. And like the fact that like they can get sick, and like how they need to be helped, and just like the lore surrounding like the book, I just think it's really, really interesting. So far I'm really enjoying the series. It's, as of right now, not my favorite Mochizuki Jun story, but I don't think it will ever take over Pandora Hearts for me. But it is really good. It is really interesting, and the art style is just amazing. Like, Mochizuki Jun is honestly just a fantastic mangaka. Like, so much. Like, love their art. Like, their art is just so captivating, and such a unique art style that it's always just so pretty to look at. Even when it's very bloody and gory, it's very beautiful. So yeah, I just had to let you guys know about this one, because like obviously it is currently like Mochizuki Jun's work that is ongoing right now, but also like the anime is coming up, so I really wanted to talk about it before the anime came out, so that maybe it'll get a bigger audience. Like definitely go and check it out. Like, I'm super excited. It's probably one of the top summer animes I'm looking forward to. So I hope you guys will check it out, and I honestly hope that you guys will end up checking out any one of these, whether you end up reading the manga or you watch the animes. Like, definitely go and check them out, because they have such intricate storylines and just such beautiful artwork. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed hearing a bit about my favorite mangaka and these series that are really near and dear to my heart, as well as the origin story of how I came up with my name. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys thought. If you guys like any of Mochizuki Jun's work, or if you're interested in checking out any of them. Also, let me know if you figured out the origin story of my name before I actually explained what it was. And please, please, please let me know down in the comments below if you guys want anime to continue and be just anime content all year round. It might not be weekly, but if I have like an anime idea, like I'll go and do it. Or if you guys think that it should just be anime. And if you guys do want it all year round, maybe pitch a few ideas of what you want it to be called instead of anime. So yeah, please let me know, because I really want to cater my content towards you guys and make stuff that you enjoy. So please let me know. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I release more fun videos on my channel, whether or not they are anime. I have some really cool series going on, like my Otomania, which I've actually skipped the past couple of weeks because I've been super busy, but that should be back on track soon. And obviously I have like my K-pop and J-pop reactions that I have posted. I'm hoping to release a couple of fun gaming videos in the future, and a couple of taste test videos, so I hope you guys will all look forward to that. But thank you for being with me on this journey of anime. It's been really, really fun, and it allowed me to like branch into some things that I've always wanted to talk about, and now I've had the chance to do that. So thank you guys for supporting anime. I hope you guys have enjoyed the series as a whole and this video, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Love you. Bye.